Hi everyone, it's Paul. This is an FNA of the right thyroid, a Thyroid 5 lesion on a 70-year-old female. See what you think of it. So what did you think about this case? So this looked pretty malignant, I hope you agree. There was really no identifiable colloid and it was a highly cellular specimen. There was just a few small follicles in the background and appeared to be macrophages, some of which were pigmented. The major population was malignant cells, and they are in loose aggregates as well as being isolated on the slides. The cell configuration was oval through elongate to almost spindle type cells, and they had a kind of moderate amount of cytoplasm, which was moderately dense really, but had quite indistinct borders to it. It was fairly homogeneous. There was not really any obvious vacuolation, but there was some small punctate vacuoles, multiple ones apparent on the air-dried specimens especially. That might have been degeneration, but it was a little bit reminiscent of what you see in metastatic melanoma, especially in fluid specimens sometimes. Nuclei showed really marked anisokaryosis. There were irregular outlines to nuclear membranes often, and they showed quite coarse chromatin, large multiple nucleoli, so a high-grade malignancy really. There was no obvious papillary thyroid carcinoma nuclear changes. So in summary, we thought this was malignant and reported it as a category 6 malignant consistent with a poorly differentiated malignancy. So the findings really raise a fairly wide differential diagnosis. Probably at the top of that list would be anaplastic thyroid carcinoma, and certainly the pleomorphism and the heterogeneity of cell types that we saw in this specimen are most fitting with that. You'd also have to consider really medullary thyroid carcinoma, although that's usually more homogeneous in the cell type. So by that I mean exclusively or predominantly spindle or rounded cells. Also nucleoli tend to be less prominent usually, and you might see neuroendocrine nuclear features, including distinctive chromatin as well as amyloid. Other things that need considering are metastases, particularly, I guess, metastatic melanoma. So that can share many of the features that we've noted here. And in this case, there were some pigmented cells in the background, although I thought they were probably hemosiderophages. Other entities that can be mistaken for anaplastic thyroid carcinoma include differentiated thyroid neoplasms with cytologic atypia. Sometimes these can have quite marked focal atypia, but in this case there wasn't really any background typical of a hurdle, follicular, or medullary thyroid carcinoma. You'd also have to exclude possibility of large cell lymphoma, principally diffuse large B cell lymphoma, or maybe a high-grade sarcoma, especially angiosarcoma, or some sort of other metastatic carcinoma that was poorly differentiated. A few weeks later, the patient underwent a thyroidectomy, and the right side of the thyroid showed a large, poorly differentiated malignancy that was epithelioid and pleomorphic, containing spindle cells and bizarre nuclei. There was mitotic activity, necrosis, and invasion present. A large battery of stains were applied. Diagnosis of anaplastic thyroid carcinoma is largely one of exclusion. It was positive for Vimentin and cyclin D, negative for cytokeratins and thyroid differentiation markers. It was negative for a lymphoproliferative disorder on immunohistochemistry and flow, and for melanoma markers and angiosarcoma markers. So this was considered consistent with sarcomatoid anaplastic thyroid carcinoma. Thanks for watching.